SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Did you know Toyota of Brookhaven has sold more new vehicles the last 2 years than any other dealership in Southwest Mississippi? Come see why. Exit 40 Brookhaven or online at ToyotaBrookhaven.com. Great service, great savings. At Toyota of Brookhaven, we deliver.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning, Mississippi.
Everything gonna be all right this morning.
Mornings with Richard Cross.
Oh, yeah.
Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Woo! Now, when I was a young boy, at the age of 5, my mother said I was gonna be the greatest man alive. But now I'm a man.
Oh, yes, Cinco de Mayo. Good morning. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Yes, it is a day where the United States celebrates a holiday that Mexicans don't really care about. Yep, Cinco de Mayo. Good morning. Alongside Lance Tolbert, I'm Richard Cross. Glad to be with you as we start a new week, the 5th of May. A little cool out this morning. Going to be nice this week. Hello, Lance.
Good morning. Back from a nice little weekend, and it is cool this morning. Had the rain, and now it's like back to spring again, not summer. So
yeah,
I'm game. I had to put on some sleeves today, though.
Yeah, I did too. I'll give you more. Long sleeves made sense. But yeah, a little nip in the air. I mean, if you like that, real good Monday morning to sit out back and sip on a cup of coffee.
I did that yesterday. I was able to get up early and normal. Just the alarm in the head goes off these days, and
as is the case,
it just kind of goes off. And I remember opening the door and going, "Oh, now I've got to put on a long sleeve shirt here. It's a little cool." Got in there and got the water boiling on the stove, got my coffee made, and had a nice little waffly long sleeve shirt on, and went outside. The dogs were just giddy and ready to go, and everything was
ready to go.
Oh man, it was nice though. I drank a whole 2 pots of
two pots of coffee.
2 pots yesterday while I enjoyed, and I looked down, it was like 11 o'clock. I'd been watching this and reading that, and
you had the shakes.
No coffee. I mean, I probably could have taken a nap after that, but it was just a great morning. Yeah, the bugs weren't out. You got to love it. Get used to it. No, don't actually, because it will be 98 degrees for long.
There you go. Yeah, great weekend for us. Jane and I took our oldest daughter to Nashville to celebrate her. So little birthday weekend celebration. Did something I'd never done on Friday night, and it was every bit as cool as you've ever heard it is. We went to the Ryman on Friday night. What a great building. Saw Drew and Ellie Holcomb. That may or may not be your cup of tea as it comes to music, but they were fantastic. Did kind of an acoustic set to start things off, and then brought you may know Drew Holcomb from Drew Holcomb and the Neighbors, and Ellie Holcomb is his wife, and they've kind of teamed up on this tour, and just really cool. The neatest thing, a lot of times when you go to an indoor concert, you leave and your ears are just ringing for like hours. Like you can still hear that buzz, that whatever in your ears. Not like that at all at the Opry. After about 130 years, they've kind of figured out the sound thing, and just rich and full, but not overpowering, and really cool. Did a little eating, a little shopping, and got back last night, and a lot of fun. A lot of fun over the weekend.
Well, built as the Union Gospel Tabernacle.
That's right.
1888 to 1892.
The mother church of country music.
You got it. I had to be 2001. I think that was the only time I've ever been. But and there was nothing going on. We were there for a event that was in the tourism world. Yeah. And had gone there to do some networking with the Grand Ole Opry folks. And they were amazing. And we got to go in the Ryman when there was nobody there. And it was just like, wow. Totally different feel, when you get to see
think about the people that have stood on that stage.
That's what I was
thinking. A microphone in front of them, or a guitar in their hands, or all the above. It just, whew.
It was more like a museum when you go in when no one's there with spirits. You could just feel it. You knew they were there, and all of the names and the sounds and people that had graced the place. It was really almost surreal to stand there and kind of look around with nothing going on and going, this is where it all happens, really.
This is the spot. Potts Camp, you've got intervals of clouds and sunshine today with a high of 74 and winds out of the west at 5 to 10 miles an hour. Coffeyville, you're going to be generally sunny despite a few afternoon clouds. Going to bump up and get 76 this afternoon. Port Gibson, sunshine and 81 degrees, just a little breezy. Just a tick warmer than that in Lucedale today with sunny skies and a high of 82, winds light and variable. We'd love to hear from you this morning on the C Spire text line. That's how you can join the conversation, 601-879-4395. C Spire's got the best in wireless. They've got the best in home internet. They call that fiber to the home. And, they've also got the best in business IT services. So if you need help with anything IT related for your business, C Spire can help. cspire.com. C Spire, inspired by you. Love to hear from you this morning. We got some birthdays to take a look at. American country singer born in Itawamba County on this day in 1942. Oh, tell us about it, Tammy Wynette. Lost her far too young in 1998. Sticking with the music theme, Adele is 36 years old today. Born in 1988, the British pop rock singer. I don't know that I would classify her as pop rock.
Yeah.
Singer-songwriter Adele, born in Tottenham in London, Rolling in the Deep, Someone Like You, another hit, big voice. The young star tennis player Carlos Alcaraz, just 21 years old. He was born on this day in 2003. Already he has won a U.S. Open, a title at Wimbledon, and the 2024 French Open. He was born in Vienna, Spain, or Vilna, or if I can roll my L's this morning, it's early, Vienna, Spain. And born on this day in 2010 in Oxford, Mississippi, Ava Montgomery Cross. She's 15 today.
Happy birthday. Well deserved. And I hope she had a wonderful trip. It sounds like y'all did, actually. So,
yeah. She likes getting spoiled. Yeah, well, she got all Mama and Daddy's attention this weekend, and we had a good time.
That's awesome.
Cinco de Mayo celebrates the Mexican Army's victory over French forces at the Battle of Puebla, May 5th, 1862. While a minor holiday in Mexico, it's more widely celebrated in the United States, particularly in areas with large Mexican-American populations. It's a day to honor Mexican culture and heritage. Celebrations began in Columbia, California, where they have been observed annually since 1862. But the day really gained nationwide popularity beyond those of Mexican-American heritage in the 1980s. Why? Advertising campaigns. By whom? Beer, wine, and tequila companies. Today, Cinco de Mayo generates beer sales on par with those of Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah, it's one of those odd ones because
looking for a reason to party.
Yeah, well, I mean, the French actually ended up winning the war. That was a battle that the Mexicans overran the general of the French, Lorenz, who was much better equipped. But eventually, I think the French actually won that. So it's an oddity. But at the same time, it's funny because, as you say, most Mexicans in Mexico really don't celebrate that. But,
right.
I mean, if you're at the Mexican restaurant, they asked me Friday, you coming in on Monday? And I'm sitting there thinking, what's happening on Monday? And he's like, Cinco de Mayo. I said, oh, yes, I will be here. I promise. So it didn't even dawn on me, you know.
Yeah. In Mexico, the commemoration of the battle continues to be mostly ceremonial. They'll have some military parades and maybe a battle reenactment or two. The city of Puebla marks the event with various festivals and reenactments. Cinco de Mayo, though, is sometimes mistaken for Mexican Independence Day, the most important national holiday in Mexico. That is not today. That's celebrated on the 16th of September. Carnegie Hall, like the one in New York, not Dudy Noble Field in Starkville, on this day opened in 1891 as Music Hall, with Fyodor Ilyich Tchaikovsky as the guest conductor of the New York Music Society Orchestra. On this day in 1921, Coco Chanel released her famous Chanel No. 5, the most popular women's perfume of all time. On this day in 1961, Alan Shepard became the first American in space. He did so aboard Freedom 7. On this day in 1962, West Side Story's soundtrack album goes to number 1 on the charts. And Lance, it stayed number 1 for 54 weeks.
And you have that as a download, I'm sure.
I don't actually think I have West Side Story, but you know what I do have?
It's a good one, though.
You know what I do have?
What's that?
I've got Traveler.
Oh.
Released in 2015 by Chris Stapleton. Won a Grammy for Best Country Album. It was also the Billboard Album of the Year. Includes the title track, Parachute, and mega hit Tennessee Whiskey.
What an album.
Mornings with Richard Cross. Glad to be with you as we start a new week.
From Duck Hill to Alligator, Mississippians start their day the right way. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi.
C-Spire text line is open, 601-879-4395. Love to hear from you. Love to connect as we roll through the show this morning. Ready for your winning strategy? Here it is. Join C-Spire. Period. All the technology and support you need to succeed at home, at work, and everywhere else. Visit cspire.com today. C-Spire, inspired by you. 2 Mississippians have received presidential appointments for key agriculture roles, according to an announcement by the United States Department of Agriculture. It's part of a nationwide slate of appointments for the Farm Service Agency and Rural Development State Director positions. Chris McDonald and Dane Maxwell got the nods from the Trump administration. McDonald was appointed to serve as the State Director for the FSA, which is tasked with planning, organizing, and administering FSA programs throughout the state. He most recently served as director of the Federal and Environmental Affairs Committee at the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce. So worked under Andy Gibson there. Really important position for farmers. It's how they receive money through the paperwork filed with the FSA office. Maxwell was appointed to serve as state director for RD. Again, that is rural development, which is focused on finding ways to empower Mississippi's rural areas and aid in economic growth. Formerly served as mayor of Pascagoula and served as public service commissioner in the state's southern district. Maxwell's a United States Marine Corps veteran, former law enforcement officer, and owns a couple of national businesses as well. Cool news out of Cleveland, Mississippi, beginning in the fall of 2025, that is this year. Some new college students will be able to attend Delta State free of charge. School announced the Delta State Free Tuition Scholarship on Friday. It's a program that will cover 100% of tuition for Pell Grant eligible first-time freshmen. So, school president Dr. Daniel Ennis said, "We believe that a student's financial situation should never be a barrier to earning a college degree. This scholarship reinforces our mission to empower students and invest in the future of our communities. Students who are eligible for a federal student aid Pell Grant per the FSA, they are eligible for that if they display exceptional financial need. Through Delta State Supplemental Program, any remaining out-of-pocket costs not covered by their federal Pell Grant will be paid by the university. With this program, we're sending a clear message. If you want to go to college, let's go, Ennis said. Delta State is all in on making higher education more accessible and affordable. Scholarship is renewable for up to 4 years or 8 semesters as long as the student is still Pell Grant eligible and continues their academic progress toward a degree. Very cool story there. Did you see this over the weekend out of Washington, D.C.? This one flew under the radar just a little bit. A former State Department budget analyst has pleaded guilty to embezzling more than $650,000 over just a 2-year span, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C. Levita Amwete Ferrer, 64 years old, of Maryland, admitted to abusing her signature authority over a State Department checking account between March of 22 and April of 24. She wrote 60 checks to herself and 3 checks to someone else that she had a personal relationship with, printed and signed each check before depositing all 63 of them into her personal bank accounts. $657,347.50, the amount, according to prosecutors. She goes by Levita Brzovich. She attempted to hide the scheme through the use of a QuickBooks account. She would enter her name as the payee on checks in QuickBooks and print them, and then would change the listed payee in QuickBooks from herself to a legitimate State Department vendor, making it difficult for anyone viewing those entries in the QuickBooks system to see Ferrer herself as the payee on the checks. Pretty good boost to her government salary.
Yeah, a little boost to the ego and the government salary until you get the orange jumpsuit and the nice little metal plate food that somebody's slopping on there for you. You know? Yeah. So whatever lifestyle enhancement she had over the course of a couple of years, I hope she enjoyed it.
Hope you didn't spend it all in one place.
And Doge doing the Lord's work there, I think. You know,
up to 10 years in prison, and she agreed I guess it was a plea deal, to repay the $600,000.
It's going to be tough making license plates and stuff.
It may take a minute.
Yeah. Good luck on that one. I remember when we got broken into and we had a bunch of guns stolen and the guys went to jail and we'd get a little check for $4 for 15 years, each month, $2, $4. Yeah, they never get repaid for that, but
never quite made whole.
Nah. The
United States could withdraw from peace talks with Ukraine and Russia if the two sides can't make progress toward ending their 3-year war, according to President Donald Trump. He was on Meet the Press yesterday. Actually, a pretty good interview. We're going to play some of it a little bit later. Kristen Welker, the host of that. Trump told Welker that there is tremendous hatred between Ukraine and Russia. The president says he remains hopeful a peace deal is possible, but confirmed that the United States would not remain a mediator indefinitely. Trump said, quote, "I do believe we're closer with one party, and maybe not as close with the other, but we'll have to see. 5,000 soldiers a week on average are dying. They're not American soldiers, but I want to solve the problem. How long do you give both countries before you're going to walk away?" Welker asked. "Well, there will be a time when I will say, okay, keep going, keep being stupid," Trump replied. He went on to say, "Maybe it's not possible to do. There's tremendous hatred. Just so you understand, Kristen, we're talking about tremendous hatred between these two men and between, some of the soldiers, frankly, between the generals. They've been fighting hard for 3 years. I think we have a very good chance of doing it." Interview came just days after President Trump blasted Russian President Vladimir Putin, questioning whether or not he actually has any interest in peace. Had an Uber driver this weekend in Nashville, and Jane's always laughed at me. Like, when we take an Uber or a cab, I always like to chat up the driver a little bit. And it usually starts with, "Hey, man, where are you from?" This guy said Ukraine. I said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." Nice young guy. I said, "What do you make of the war?" Very open-ended. He goes, I don't know what you want me to say. I don't want you to say anything. Like, I'm just kind of curious your perspective as somebody who lived there. He lived in the Crimea area of the country. And he was kind of timid to talk about it at first, but then he just let it go. He's like, what would you do if somebody tried to come in and take all of your property and everything you own? And I asked him, I said, how would you ultimately feel if, for the sake of peace and ending the war, Ukraine conceded some of the land that Russia's taken over? And he paused for a second, Lance. He looked at me and he goes, no.
Yeah.
They took it from us. It's ours. It was a really interesting perspective. I said, are you going to stay in the United States? He goes, I don't know. He said, we've got a year left on our visa. Said the Trump administration's not going to renew that. He said, my wife and kids are safe here. And it was one of those moments that left me like really, really thinking. And I found myself like throughout the course of the weekend just kept going back to that conversation. This is a guy that's here legally. I mean, he's got a visa. He is here in the United States legally. But obviously it's a temporary visa. And it's like, okay, this is a guy who came to the United States to protect his family and his young children, where they're receiving a good education. But can you imagine sitting in a spot where you just don't know what you're going to do a year from now? Are you going to have to uproot your family for a second time in 4 years and move to another country that's willing to have you? Is something going to happen that will allow you to stay in the United States?
Yeah, and everything you worked for your whole life is gone.
Are you going to be forced to go back to your war-torn home country where the war that's going on is no fault of your own? I don't have any answers to those questions. It just struck me as, the human part of war. It's really easy for us to forget about that and just kind of, move on with whatever's going on in our lives. There are a lot of Ukrainians and, frankly, a lot of Russians that don't want this war, had no part in this war starting, and yet they are the collateral. Got some sports headlines, a bunch of them for you coming up next. Mornings with Richard Cross.
Morning, Mississippi. You're starting your day off right. Welcome to Mornings with Richard Cross here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
You were the first thing that I thought of when I thought I drank you off my mind. When I get lost in the liquor, you're the only one I find. If I did
9 in a row. Last time Southern Miss lost a baseball game was the Friday game, game 2 of a doubleheader against Georgia State on April 18th. They won the series finale on the Saturday before Easter. 7 straight wins in the Sun Belt Conference, including a sweep this past weekend over Arkansas State. Beat them 2-1 on Friday night, 8-0 on Saturday, and then got a 10-run rule victory yesterday, 14-2. Did it in just 7 innings. And the Golden Eagles are playing some good baseball. The pitching's been good. The offense has been timely. They're playing good defense. They're 35-13 overall. And it's all conference play the rest of the way for USM. They played their last regular season non-conference game this past week during the midweek. Back at home this weekend with the Ragin' Cajuns coming into town out of the University of Louisiana. And then they'll close it out next weekend against Troy on the road in Troy, Alabama. Some good baseball going on right now for Coach Oz And the Golden Eagles in Hattiesburg, Lance.
Yeah, Middleton, too. I saw a report the other day. He's up into possibly the top 10 starting pitchers in the country.
Well, there's no doubt he's one of the top 10 starting pitchers. It's like, are they ranking him that way?
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think he'd gotten thrown into that after the month that he's had. I mean, he's really just had an amazing month and led the front end of that. And that lineup, goodness gracious, there's murderer's row out there with Cook and Monaster, Russo, Pato, Barrett and Higdon. I mean, they're tearing it up. Pratt, I mean, that team is really coming together. So
no doubt.
Dangerous.
No doubt. Trying to play themselves into baseball at the Pete in late May and early June. Can they get there? Hey, keep winning. They're going to have a chance.
Yeah, Jake Cook had a beautiful home run saving catch, too. You just keep showing out there at the top of the order and play an amazing defense. Kind of funny how that works, you know. You play great defense, get on base, has a tendency to work out well for you.
A week ago today, Mississippi State made a head coaching change in baseball. They parted ways with Chris Lemonis, and Justin Parker, the pitching coach, became the interim head coach. Since then, Mississippi State has won all 4 games that it's played. They beat Memphis in the midweek last week, 18-5, and this weekend, although hampered by weather, got all 3 games in. A doubleheader on Saturday as part of Super Bulldog weekend, a 14-4 win in 7 innings over Kentucky, followed by a 6-5 win that took 11 innings, finished that one late Saturday night, and then yesterday with an earlier start, a noon start on Sunday, the Bulldogs got a 6-1 victory over the Kentucky Wildcats. So 4 in a row for Mississippi State. They moved to 29 wins on the season. Bulldogs playing their best baseball, maybe, at the end of the season. Now 29-19 overall. 6 games remaining for Mississippi State in the regular season. All of them SEC games. Got the Rebels coming in this weekend.
That's going to be epic.
Ooh, buddy.
Yeah.
and kind of a reinvigorated fan base as they had like over 38,000 for the 3 games this weekend. Going to be big crowds in Starkville coming up for Ole Miss. They play at 7:30 on Friday night, 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon, and 1 o'clock next Sunday. I lied. There's one more non-conference game for the Bulldogs. They play North Alabama the following Tuesday.
Yeah, you got to love that.
Close it out on the road at Mizzou.
You got to love that, you know, you got North Alabama sandwiched in there at the end of the season. I can't stand this stuff, honestly. I wish they would do like 4 or 5 huge tournaments, you know, at the beginning of the season. And just play conference games. And, I mean, that goes for everybody, Southern Miss, whoever. I just think you get into this part of the conference schedule, and it's pointless to go play a non-conference foe when everything that's riding on your season is about how you play in conference play right now.
I would argue, just a thought, that you could play for the entire year 4-game weekends. You've got 14 weeks in the regular season. Just play 4 games on the weekend, whether it's, you know, 1 opponent or 2. If you want to, you break it up however you want to in the early part of the season. And then, you know,
I think you
leave the midweeks open. Get your pitching right.
Yeah.
Do, you know, however you want to do it.
Well, I think it would help it too with your development early. You know, baseball is such a quick get ready for the season. You got the spring and then the fall, and they're 2 separate deals. And you got a few weeks where you're getting everybody going. It'd be nice to see, you know, you play more games in the first 5 weeks than you get, so you can see what you have, and then you know where you're going into the conference play. But, you know, that's just me. I've done those. I've sliced the schedule up so many times sitting up here doing games where I'm like, why did they do this? Why?
Yeah. Ole Miss went on the road to Norman, Oklahoma this weekend. Over the course of 3 games, the Rebels gave up a total of 10 runs. And yet they only came away with 1 win. Norman, Oklahoma was the site. L. Dale Mitchell Field, 2-0. Oklahoma got the win in a pitcher's duel in Game 1. In Game 2, it was Oklahoma winning 5-3. And yesterday, the Rebels salvaged one. They got that 7-3 victory. It's amazing how that 1 win in the final weekend of the series can take a sour weekend and make it a little more palatable, make that trip home a little easier to swallow. And that's what happened. So Ole Miss comes home last night, finals this week, graduation this weekend before Rebels head to Starkville, almost 33-15 overall. They're 13-11 in the SEC.
Hey, man, I've got to say here, I don't know if there's a better pitcher in the country right now than Mason Morris for what they're asking him to do and the roles that he plays. I mean, he comes in with bases loaded yesterday. I mean, you know, in a game that you have to win.
It's like, go get him, kid.
Hey, yeah, it's you got this. Go for it. And he just keeps delivering. So you got to pat him on the back, coming into odd roles and doing an amazing job and filling it up. I mean, the guy throws strikes at. I love the guys yesterday. They were like, "Well, we've been told he's 92 to 94, but he hit 97." I'm like, who have y'all been watching all year? I mean, this guy's been pumping 99.
Somebody needs to work on the scouting report just a little bit. Ole Miss 7 games remaining in the regular season. The trip to Starkville, a home game against UT Martin, and then Auburn at home to close out the regular season. You know, kind of different dynamic with the 3 teams remaining. Southern Miss, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss. Southern Miss very much alive for the possibility of hosting a postseason regional. Mississippi State, their postseason life kind of on life support, but this weekend sweep of Kentucky gives them a chance. Big one coming up. And for Ole Miss, well, the Rebels could absolutely be hosting in Oxford. If they win 4 of their final 6 games, that'd be 17 wins. That almost guarantees a host. They go 3-3 over the final 6. You get to 16 wins. I don't know. How many SEC host sites are you going to get? We'll have to wait and see. On Saturday, in one of the great sporting events on the calendar each and every year, you had a sloppy, muddy, rainy, nasty Kentucky Derby. And the winner pulled away at the end, and, the jokes kind of write themselves.
Equos is the leader at the top of the stretch. Journalism is on the move as they turn for home, and Sovereignty is coming with him on the outside. The two of them go right by with a furlong to run. Journalism and Sovereignty, nose to nose, down to the last 16th of a mile. Sovereignty has taken the lead. Journalism is second toward the inside. Baez is third, but it will be Sovereignty to rule the Kentucky Derby. Journalism and Baez over next. Final Gambit was fourth. The final time was 2:02.31 seconds.
All the jokes. Sovereignty wins over journalism again.
Yeah. And I've got Sawyer Brown races on for the out. You know,
I love it.
The spirit of, hey, what a great race, though. One of the funniest things that I was watching it as they were getting everybody ready, and you had that about 30 minutes before the race, and they had the jockey and his wife and the 2 kids. And I always knew that jockeys were kind of small, but the guy was standing there with his 2 kids, and they had to be like 5 and 6.
They're almost as tall as he is.
They're about as tall as him, but his wife was twice him. I mean, she was literally she looked 7 feet tall, and I was sitting there thinking of the dynamic of that relationship. Like, when you go out and everything, he was so little, but I was such a great guy. And then the other thing, I don't know how fast Baez was coming down the stretch, but that dude was flying. If he wouldn't have gotten bogged down in that last corner, the race between he and Sovereignty there going in to that stretch would have been epic. But yeah, Baez, a horse that wasn't even supposed to be in the race, finished third. I thought that was a great race. Nasty. His mother's a mutter. His father's a mutter.
Shout out to Larry Collins. That's the voice you just heard, the race announcer. He calls that race through binoculars, except when it's in the front stretch right directly in front of him. Never looks at a monitor, never looks at his notes, did not miss a single word.
Wow.
And he knew he nailed it. Speaking of nailing it, Scotty Scheffler nailed it this weekend. He had the largest 54-hole lead on the PGA Tour since 2011. And he set a tour record, lowest score in relation to par in PGA tournament history, 31 under par, 8 shots clear to win the CJ Cup, Byron Nelson. We're back with you right after this. It's Mornings with Richard Cross.
From the Venable Glass.
Want to know what's being said in the halls of the Capitol? You're in the right place. Mornings with Richard Cross continues on SuperTalk Mississippi.
In just a moment, we will get you your Mississippi Lottery update, mslottery.com. Just a couple of other notes about the Scotty Scheffler victory at CJ Cup. Byron Nelson played in his hometown of Dallas, or the Dallas area. He had his son there to celebrate with him after it was all over. The runaway victory came 11 years after Scotty Scheffler made his PGA Tour debut at the Nelson as a high school senior, and 22 years after a photo was taken of a then 6-year-old Scotty Scheffler with the tournament's namesake, Byron Nelson. Said he couldn't help but think about that day in 2014 when his now wife, Meredith, was just his girlfriend, and his sister, Callie, now a mother of 2, was his caddy. Said my family was all able to be here, and it was just really, really special memories, and I think that it comes all crashing down at once. Have a lot of great memories as kids coming to watch this tournament. I just dreamed to be able to play in it, and it's more of a dream to be able to win it. Cool story there.
He's been on top of his game for a bit, too. Man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Been playing a pretty good golf for a while.
Hey, and finally in the sports world, the SEC softball tournament begins on Tuesday of this week. There are 3 games on Tuesday, including game 2 of the day between the 11 seed Ole Miss and the number 14 seed Missouri. Mississippi State will play in the first game of the day on Wednesday when they take on LSU. Mississippi State is the 8 seed and LSU is the 9 seed. If Ole Miss wins, they would take on the Florida Gators, who are the 6th seed, in the third game of day 2. Ole Miss is on the bottom side of the bracket, Mississippi State on the top side. So should you get a Magnolia State SEC championship tournament game, it would be on Saturday, May 10th in the championship game. That's the only way the two could meet in conference play. They played in Starkville this past weekend with Mississippi State taking the Thursday and Friday games, and Ole Miss winning the finale on Saturday.
I don't know if there's a more fun sport to watch in person than minor league hockey or college softball. It's so fast.
Pretty fast-paced.
Oh, man, it's awesome.
No doubt. All right, here's your Mississippi Lottery update. No jackpot winner with Lotto America on Saturday, so the estimated jackpot for tonight's drawing is $32.52 million with an estimated cash value of $14,950,000. The numbers from Saturday night, 21, 23, 39, 45, and 50. Star Ball was 1. The All-Star bonus multiplier was 3. How about this out of Batesville with Powerball? No jackpot winner, but one player matched 4 out of the 5 white balls and the Powerball to win $50,000. Got that ticket at R&B Tobacco in Batesville. The estimated jackpot for tonight is $54 million. Saturday's numbers 10, 21, 23, 35, 65. The Powerball was 24, and the Power Play multiplier was 2.
Double play numbers from Saturday, May the 3rd, 14, 23, 33, 38, and 60. You had a Powerball of 3. Mega Millions, no jackpot winner. The estimated jackpot for the Tuesday, May 6th drawing is up to $90 million. You get to take home about $40.8 million of that. The numbers from Friday, May the 2nd, 14, 37, 40, 41, 68. Mega Ball of 2.
No jackpot winner on Saturday night for Match 5. The numbers were 13, 18, 19, 20, and 23. Tonight's jackpot is $248,000. You got the Sunday numbers from Cash 3 and Cash 4?
You got it, brother. Cash 3, $500 Sunday, midday 001. Evening numbers 832. Cash 4, $5,000 midday 4484. Evening 3838. Fireball of 5, Cash Pop of 9 in the midday. Evening Fireball 0, Cash Pop of 9.
Yeah, kind of watching this every day for the last 6 months, it's remarkable how consistent the retailer payout is each week for lottery members. About $4.5 million based on winnings each week. lottery claims office paid out only $142,000 last week. Retailers, though, paid out $4.5 million. So got a lot of winners out there. And it's funny, that lottery claims office, they always seem to catch up. They might have a couple of weeks where they don't pay out quite as much out of the main office, and then boom, $8 million goes out in a week. The lottery is turning up the heat this May. Starting tomorrow, May 6th, 3 brand-new scratch-off games will hit retailers. Heat Stroke, Blazing Hot Bucks, and Red Hot Cash. Prizes up to $200,000. Even better, non-winning tickets can still win big. Enter them into the lottery's newest bonus promotion, Sizzlin' Summer Cash, for your shot at prizes from $500 gift cards all the way up to $25,000 in cash. That's your Mississippi Lottery update. Visit them online at mslottery.com. The news is next. Then we get started with our guest, 7 o'clock hour, Richard Roberson from the Mississippi Hospital Association will join us from Washington, D.C. We'll talk about what he's looking for and what's going to happen today in D.C. with the Hospital Association when we come back.
That's getting there. That's getting worried.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, and callers on this show are not the opinions of TeleSouth Communications, its management, or advertisers.
Get the inside track on Mississippi politics. Yeah! Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good Monday morning to you. This is Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Just a short time ago that we visited with this guest, but happy to do it again this morning. Just because I had a friend with the same last name as you, and people rarely pronounced his last name correctly. So I'm going to let you say it. Are we long O or short O?
It is a short O. It is Roberson.
That is the voice of Richard Roberson, President and CEO of the Mississippi Hospital Association. I just wanted to make sure I got that right. I think I just guessed last time and wanted to make sure I got it right.
Man, you nailed it. No, I appreciate you asking. Quick, funny story. My great-great-great-grandfather dropped the T about 175 years ago because he was tired of his mail getting confused with some Robertsons somewhere outside Savannah, Tennessee, just north of Corinth and all that area. And it fixed his problem for the last 30 or 40 years of his life. But man, the official name change kind of messed the rest of us up. So
yeah, nobody would have said Robertson all of those years and mispronounced it.
No.
But hey, all right. So we got the important stuff out of the way. You were in our nation's capital today, Richard. When we talked a couple of weeks ago, we talked about some of the concerns that exist for hospitals and in the healthcare industry, especially as it pertains to federal funding. Tell me what you're there for today.
So we're up here with the American Hospital Association's annual meeting where they have a lot of guest speakers come in and many people from Washington, D.C., from federal agencies, political commentators, or these days maybe political speculators, and trying to think through what's going to happen and politically. And then we also get a chance to meet with our great Mississippi delegation over the next couple of days, and just talk about things from back home, share things with them that are going on. They're important for Mississippi hospitals, and not just hospitals, but Mississippi healthcare. So this is the time of year we do that, and glad to be up here and get to visit with some good folks.
There is uncertainty that exists right now in terms of what funding models are going to look like going forward as it pertains to reimbursements for states with Medicare, Medicaid. So many questions to be answered, and we don't have a budget yet. I saw I guess it was a post from Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, this morning, talking about that big budget. Said it has 7 committees at this point have marked up the budget. There are 4 more to go. They've got a very aggressive timeline to try and get it done. I guess I say that to say it feels like there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Do you have a sense right now for ultimately what it is going to look like when it crosses the finish line?
I don't. We're getting more details, more speculation as to what it could look like as far as Medicare, Medicaid. The president, of course, has said that he doesn't have an intent to cut Medicare or Medicaid. Congress has some different ideas, it looks like, on that. What we heard yesterday was there's a lot of talk about trying to get this bill through by the 4th of July. And, trying to have the drafts and all those, I guess, committee work and all that stuff done. So it's moving forward, by Memorial Day. So that's a pretty aggressive timeline considering where we hear things are right now. So we'll see. But 4th of July is a date that was thrown out there yesterday by a few of the commentators that we heard from.
Well, and 4th of July sounds like a long way off. I mean, it feels like we were just starting the legislative session in Mississippi, but we're on the 5th of May. We're talking less than 2 months if they hit a 4th of July deadline. That's moving pretty quickly. Does that concern you that it goes from markup to potential final passage by the 4th of July?
Well, it concerns me that, we need to focus more on what's in the bill and not how quickly we get a bill out. Mm-hmm. And, that's our concern, is that because of the unintended consequences, and you just need time for people to weigh in because there's going to be a lot of moving parts in there. And when there's a lot of moving parts, you need to stop and work through it just to make sure you don't have an unintended consequence. One of the classic examples of moving quickly was the Affordable Care Act itself. It got rushed through in the last couple of months because of some things that happened in the Senate. And there were some unintended consequences, things that were supposed to be buttoned up, didn't get buttoned up. And so, that's a classic example of what can happen in healthcare when you try to move quickly instead of just taking the time to get it right the first time.
Yeah, so many people have called the ACA Obamacare through the years. It is legislation that went into place and was beneficial for a lot, but has cost a lot of people a lot of money. With now, good grief, 10, 12, maybe close to 15 years of history to look at. Was the ACA the best thing or the worst thing or somewhere in between that ever happened to the healthcare system?
I think there's a lot of good things that happened. And, in Mississippi, we have taken advantage of many of the good things that have happened. Not all the things are good. Not all the things are bad. There have been some good things like letting your kids stay on your health insurance to the age of 26, especially if they're going through college, going through grad school, maybe. They're not able to get employer covered insurance. But stuff like that has been good. Some of the things that, additional rules, regulations, maybe, I think we could argue probably aren't as good. Things that may have added more cost to the system than were originally intended. But it's like everything that comes out of D.C. or even things that come out of Jackson. There's going to usually be a little bit of things that are little mixed results on it. So, but I think the main thing right now is where we are in this world that we're in, particularly with healthcare, coming out of COVID and all the uncertainty and just the gut-wrenching impact of that. And we're finally getting our sea legs under us. And then you just worry a lot about what's about to happen, that folks may be going too fast, too quickly, and we just need to take time to assess that. And even heard a really interesting quote or really interesting thought yesterday about tariffs even impacting some of the cost of healthcare. And over $74 billion are imported that relate to medical supplies and medical equipment, medical devices. And, additional tariffs on that add additional costs. So if you're talking about 10, 20, 30% on top of $74 billion, all that cost has to get passed through somehow to someone. And, again, those are just things that, as people are picking that up and recognizing it, we're able to communicate that to our legislative delegation, through our congressional delegation, so that they can just be aware and we don't step off into some unintended consequences. So,
does that number include pharmaceuticals, or is that just equipment and supplies?
That's just equipment and supplies, but those are things that are just everyday things like needles, syringes, IV bags, those types of things that are needed every day in hospitals, but they're made overseas because it's less expensive. So they're less expensive things, but the total cumulative value of that adds up. So we just have to be aware of all those things.
Anytime you have a large government entity, we know that there's money that's wasted. I'm curious what your perspective is on DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, as they're looking at different programs across the board. Do you see that as a benefit to maybe strip out some of the waste within Medicare, Medicaid, the healthcare system, or are you concerned that they are just like going in with a chainsaw and cutting stuff and the results be damned?
Well, I'll say this: we are 100% supportive of eliminating fraud and abuse from the healthcare system. When I was with the state, with the Attorney General's office, and with the Division of Medicaid under Governor Barber, we spent a lot of time trying to weed out fraudsters and abusers of the system, and we were very successful with that. Our error rate measurements were typically the lowest, or among the top 5 lowest in the country, which meant we were more accurate in what we paid for and who we paid than other states were. So we did a great job on that, and I think our agency still does a good job on that as far as what we pay through Medicaid. There's always a ton of fat to trim in any large program, whether it's state, federal, or even local. There's always some fat that can be trimmed here and there, but sometimes that fat's in the eye of the beholder. And, one person's view of something may be very different than another person's view, and critical funding for research and the things that we benefit from and learning how to treat diseases, that's important. That's important funding. And so we do want to make sure that we let folks know about the impact of those decisions, and then they can make up their own mind. We elect them, we send them here to make decisions on our behalf, but I see our role as making sure that we've informed them.
If you happen to bump into Drew Snyder today, tell him that I said hello. He and I were in school together. So proud of him and all of his success and all the good work that he's doing. But pretty cool stuff there.
I will tell him hello for you.
Sounds great. Richard, thanks for checking in this morning. Here's to fruitful meetings, and hopefully you learn some stuff that you can share with us when you get back home.
We'll do it. Thanks, Richard. I appreciate you.
You as well. Richard Roberson, President and CEO of the Mississippi Hospital Association, joining us on Mornings with Richard Cross. We'll stick with a guest when we come back. Patrick Sullivan is next.
From the Mississippi.
Keeping Mississippi in the know, one morning at a time. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Lance, do you know why it is that when you spill coffee, it seems to be like the giant of all spills?
Yeah, it always is, yeah.
I didn't slosh that much coffee out of my coffee cup. I was like turning the corner and bumped into a door frame. And I managed to get coffee in places that I didn't even know existed. Yeah. I mean, myself, the floor, the wall, the baseboards, the door frame. Like, jeez.
You elbowed it?
Good Monday morning. Yeah, exactly. It's like it hit the elbow, bumped the coffee, and then it just like splatters. So I think we've all been there at some point.
I do it regularly.
Appreciate Richard Roberson joining us, and glad to welcome Patrick Sullivan in now. He is president of the Mississippi Energy Institute. Patrick, good morning.
Good morning, Richard.
Have you ever had that experience with coffee? Like you're just not paying attention, you bump into something, and you're like, how did it go all of those places?
I've done it a few times. I've got a son who is a champion at spilling all sorts of liquids.
There you go. Well, I had that with my daughter not too long ago. I'd gotten her some kind of a fancy coffee, and it was sitting on the console in my truck. I couldn't figure out why she didn't put it in the cup holder.
Yeah, he went and got a new truck after that. Don't let him lie to you.
As I was getting in, I managed to knock it over, and like, who knew there were so many places in a vehicle? Mississippi Energy Institute. Let's start there. Tell me what you guys do there.
Okay, so real quick. Before we get into the interesting stuff, we're a private nonprofit funded by energy companies, manufacturing companies. Our job is to is to help the state stay on the right track in thinking about the details of energy policy and how that can be leveraged to attract energy-related investment and economic growth in general.
I feel like this is a really timely conversation, given some of what we've seen from the governor lately. He's talking about the economic development that is happening in the state of Mississippi. As we've talked with different people involved with those projects, it always comes back to energy. And the governor kind of doubled down on that over the weekend. I guess it was Friday when he put something out where he said, not only are we going to be one of the best places for economic development, but we're going to lead the way in energy also, and diversification within their energy sector as well. What does he mean by that?
Well, so there was a meeting Thursday, and so the governor's branded an effort that he's calling Mississippi's Power Play. And he's right to be doing this, because what's happening is globally, and especially in the U.S., electricity demand is growing at a faster rate than we've ever seen it. It's growing at a faster rate than historically we've been able to supply it. And so when you consider the rate of demand, a lot of it's due to the technology sector, but industrial growth. And you got to remember, Richard, there are still billions of people across the globe that live what we would consider very substandard lives, that need access to energy, don't have refrigerators, don't live in heated and cooled environments. And so to increase their standard of living, their quality of life, energy will necessarily need to increase in those countries. I mean, India, countries across Africa, South America, Central America. So the idea is that locations that have the ability to add energy capacity faster, and that doesn't mean fast, it just means faster than other places, will be somewhat of an oasis for industrial investment.
So many different types of energy. We know about the history of coal, and all we've heard for the last 3 decades, coal is bad, coal has to go away, but it's obviously a significant piece there. We've seen the proliferation of solar. We've seen the proliferation of wind. I guess there's good that goes along with that, but there certainly is bad as well. Nuclear is so fascinating to me because forever nuclear meant these massive multi-billion, tens of billions of dollars in terms of infrastructure. Is nuclear changing, though? I've heard people talking about these micro-nuclear reactors and the way that they're far safer. There's far less concern about stability. What does that look like going in the future?
Well, first, as you mentioned, diversification. I think the right way to look at energy, especially electricity system, is as a complementary system. All things need to fit together and work together. Just like a stock portfolio, diversity is the best policy. So in nuclear, I think the main thing that I think the public needs to know about nuclear is that it is an incredibly long-term sector of electricity. So when you're talking about construction, whether you're talking about large reactors or this new technology that's out there on the horizon still, small modular reactors, it's a very long-term development. I think expectations now are that there are several SMR, small modular reactor technologies that are in development in the U.S., but none are expected to be in operation, before the mid-2030s, early 2030s at the earliest. And so we're still talking about it out there on the horizon. And so I think, one way to put it in nuclear, if nuclear is part of the answer to the need and greater capacity in the future, one thing we know is it takes an incredibly long time to build, and it's incredibly expensive to build. And so you take Grand Gulf. I'm 47 years old. Grand Gulf started construction before I was born.
Really?
When Richard Nixon was president. And so it began operation in 1984. It's scheduled to operate through 2044. I expect after that it'll be extended another 20 years. So it'll be 80 years at the end of the day. And today here in central Mississippi, Grand Gulf is our cheapest, most reliable source of generation. And so, even though it had...
How much of central Mississippi is powered by that nuclear reactor just outside Port Gibson?
Well, looking at it in a statewide, roughly, 18, 20% of total power in Mississippi, comes out
from that one reactor.
Mm-hmm. And almost all of the rest of it is natural gas. There's a few solar projects sprinkled in there. There's currently some coal generation on the coast. But right now, we're heavy natural gas. And so when you look at it, you look at the growth and kind of what the governor's trying to look at our state. When you're looking in the next 15 years, realistically, the only way to add new generation is in that natural gas sector, based on what we know now.
Yeah. Right. Let's nerd out for just a second. Power creation. We hear there's a nuclear reactor. We hear we need natural gas or wind or solar. Harnessing that energy and then getting it to the grid in the form of electricity where I can plug a phone charger into the wall in my house and all of a sudden the battery on my cell phone will last for the rest of the day, hopefully. How does that happen?
Well, so in simple terms, you got generation, you've got transmission, where you've got high voltage that's carried away from the generation facilities, and you've got distribution. The system the very intricate system that requires a lot of transformers and lines that delivers power to our house. And so, I think in the context of what we're talking about, in the growth in demand and how to meet the demand and how to turn that into an economic opportunity for Mississippi, we got to think in terms of some of the things you just mentioned. Our phones. We live in this digital world now, and you think about it. The songs that you got stored on your phone. If you're a hunter, there are a lot of guys out there like us who have game cameras, and you think about the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photos. So we may not be directly consuming the power, but all of the storage required to house all that data is requiring an enormous amount of power. And so we're seeing it right up here in Madison County as one example with the AWS project.
Yeah.
Our lifestyles are creating the demand for more and more and more of that.
So when something lives in a cloud, that cloud is actually a data center somewhere, and that data center requires a massive amount of power to be able to function and operate. And it doesn't look like our need for data capacity is going down, right? It's growing exponentially, and that's why we're seeing so many of these data centers that are cropping up. How are they powered? Will there be a substation on site there at the AWS facility, for example?
Well, here they're powered by the local utility company, Energy, and so
right.
There's a new generation facility going in at Greenville. You see news here recently of another new generation facility going in right down the road from the AWS facility. So it's powered locally, which I think is probably the best, most realistic solution when you have a local utility that's able to provide the power. Ideally, if you're a data storage company, that's one less thing for you to worry about.
Yeah. Visiting with Patrick Sullivan. He's the president of the Mississippi Energy Institute. We'll continue our conversation with him. He also chairs the State Workforce Board, and we'll talk a little bit about the business community's view on Mississippi's workforce as we continue on this Monday morning, the 5th of May. Thanks for being with us as we start a new week. This is the month when kids, for the most part, get out of school, so everybody counting down the days to that as well. More MRC with you right after this.
The mountains win again. The mountains win again.
From the Mornings with Richard Cross is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Know where the news is going next. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Good to be with you this morning. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi. Patrick Sullivan is my guest. He's president of the Mississippi Energy Institute. Let's hear from Governor Tate Reeves. This was at the end of last week.
Mississippi's power play will help us do exactly that. My goal with this initiative is to tear down red tape, to stimulate investment, and to make Mississippi a model for energy policy and for energy investment.
The post on X that went along with that clip from the governor said American energy independence, Mississippi energy dominance. I'm assuming when you're president of the Mississippi Energy Institute, that all sounds like good news.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, the Governor Reeves is saying the right things, and I think the focus here is, as we talked about, how do you create the electricity capacity in the future? We're not talking about something that's going to happen next year or the next in terms of real tangible projects, but he's looking long term in 2030 to 2045. What are things that we need to do today in terms of laying the policy groundwork that's going to allow Mississippi to be a state that's able, especially the energy industry, where energy companies can move faster here and maybe marginally less expensive on projects here than in other locations. And it's not an easy venture because we're talking about, you mentioned the intricacies of the electric system. It's a very large-scale system. Typically, everything involved is very capital-intensive. And so, the work that's taking place now is thinking through how can we take reasonable steps as a state to make it easier and maybe slightly less risky for energy companies to invest here than other locations. Some parts of this, there are parts of the U.S. and other parts of the world where some future industrial activity absolutely will not occur. West Coast, New England, Europe, because of bad decisions they've made that restrict energy development, those locations will not see industrial
But Patrick, those people, the people that live in those places, they still expect to receive electricity, the energy that they need to go through their daily lives.
Well, they do, but they're paying for it too. In some of these places, they're paying 2 or 3 times what we pay in Mississippi. And so, you look at the AWS project right down the road. I live in Madison County, and so I was talking to somebody recently about tax revenues associated with that facility. I mean, it's just massive. And so I look at it and like, well, thanks. I'm a resident of Madison County. I don't expect my property taxes to be going up anytime soon. And so the more these industrial developments happen near us, the less pressure it takes off of all the rest of us to pay the bills.
When you hear during campaign season, drill, baby, drill, I mean, obviously the oil piece or the natural gas piece is just one component of this kind of entire energy portfolio. But is that more like code talk for energy independence and kind of what Tate Reeves was talking about in terms of removing red tape?
I think it's it's turned into a mantra of just a simple statement that says we support the oil and gas business, the U.S. oil and gas business, which I think most Americans would agree with. Why wouldn't we want to produce more energy here as opposed to buying it from some other part of the world? Even going further than that, why wouldn't we want to produce so much energy here that we could export it to the rest of the world that needs it? Because as we just mentioned, there's places like Europe who need it, but they refuse to produce it. And so I think the challenge right now is energy prices are relatively low, and so there's not much of an environment out there that would encourage oil and gas companies to invest in new exploration and production. And so, I think the president, was right in expressing his support for the oil and gas business, but he also expressed support for lowering energy prices. And I think you can have one but not the other. And so, it looks like we've got an environment now where energy's very affordable. Hopefully it'll stay but not an environment that's encouraging a lot of investment in new exploration and production.
Yeah. It's funny. I don't know if you saw the show Landman that streamed online. I think it was on Paramount. And one of the characters, I think the character that John Hamm played on there, he was sitting at an oil board meeting, and he said, the perfect spot is for oil to sit. And I'm making up the numbers. I don't remember exactly what they were, but it was like between $76 and $88 a barrel. It's like if it goes below that, the oil companies go bust, and if it goes above that, demand or consumption goes down because it's just too expensive. It's like there's a sweet spot where it can be good for everybody and maybe even encourage more exploration.
Yeah, that television show, I watched it too. I mean, it is a drama, and so there's a lot of, but there are parts of it, like the scene that you just mentioned, where there's a lot of good truths. Billy Bob Thornton, had several places where he went off, in explaining something, and there's just a lot of truth in some of the things that they were communicating there.
Yeah, interesting to see. We saw a story last week where much of Europe went dark for the better part of the day, and they explained it as some natural phenomenon that was kind of a freak deal. But it brings attention to the fact that a major power outage or a major grid interruption could absolutely cause life to come screeching to a halt, especially in a place like the United States. In terms of the grid and modifications to it, we know that it's old, we know that it's antiquated, we know that it's out of date. What's going on with, and I'm using air quotes here, the grid in terms of bringing it into the future, which we know is very expensive and very time-consuming? Is that happening incrementally, or are we just sitting there with our hands tied behind our back and hoping for the best forever?
No, it's happening. I mean, as you go through time, that's part of what utilities do is upgrade their systems and do it in a way where you're not burdening the customers, too much at one time with upgrades. A couple of things in Europe, in Portugal. One thing that happened right before they had their outage was they peaked at their highest that they have ever produced from renewable sources. I think they were 100% renewable powered just before. And so, I mean, there are lessons learned. You take Texas. You remember Texas a few years ago when they had a bad outage when it got really cold for several weeks. There were the number of people who died as a result. And if you study what happened in Texas, they added a lot of generation. A lot of it was due to federal policy. But the other part was due to decisions Texas had made decades ago on how they wanted to be disconnected from the rest of the grid and deregulated, which sounds like a good thing, but it's not. And so what happened is Texas' economy grew faster and faster, than any other state. They added a lot of renewable generation, but they failed to add gas generation because they lacked the necessary incentives for investors to invest in gas generation, and they just had a perfect storm. But reliability is reliability and cost. I think people would put a reliability over and above everything else. And kind of going back to where we started this, everything has to complement. What we said about renewables doesn't mean that you don't invest in renewables. It's just you invest in renewables in a way that they complement the other parts of the generation.
You use the term renewables. Lots of people refer to that as clean energy or green energy. It's a conversation that goes hand in hand with climate change. And I hope people hear what I say here and don't put me in some kook category. Climate change is real. And we've got thousands and thousands of years worth of history to tell us that the climate changes over the course of time. How does that conversation... By the way, Antarctica just added ice this year for the first time in a long time. So it's constantly changing. How do those conversations go together, though? Renewables, green energy, clean energy, climate change, responsible usage, all of that rolled into one.
Well, I think it's complex. You kind of go back to how much time, certain people in Washington have spent talking about climate change here over the last, 10 or 20 years. But at the same time, they've done, very, very little at encouraging real investment and activity in nuclear power development, which is the single largest source of carbon-free power. And so, to me, what that says is those people, they either don't know what they're talking about or they're not serious. And so, if we were serious about lowering emissions, which I think we could all agree that lower emissions are better than higher emissions. And so if we're serious about, lowering emissions, then we would invest more in things like nuclear power, which we failed to do for a whole generation. And so we'll see what happens. It seems to be speeding up, the conversation in D.C. about how revitalize that sector. But as we talked about earlier, that's still a very long-term endeavor.
Only 30 seconds left. Do you anticipate another major nuclear reactor coming online in Mississippi in the next decade to 15 years?
I think it's very, very possible. I hope so.
Yeah, especially when, to your point earlier, about 18% of central Mississippi or state of Mississippi is powered by what's going on at Grand Gulf. Patrick, thanks so much for your time. I learned a lot in that conversation. I hope others did as well, and I look forward to visiting with you again soon.
Thanks, Richard.
Patrick Sullivan, president of the Mississippi Energy Institute. We're back with you right after this. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi.
From the Venom.
No filibuster. Just everything you need to know to start your day smarter. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi.
Who we got picking there?
That's Ry Cooter. Legend.
Good to be with you this morning. It is Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi. Thanks to Patrick Sullivan for joining us, president of the Mississippi Energy Institute. Interesting stuff there to me. You've probably heard me say before, I think we all take for granted the ability to be able to stick our computer charger into the wall or our phone charger into the wall or the microwave or toaster oven or refrigerator or stove or any other appliance, and it just works. And from the power generated from a nuclear power plant or a wind turbine or a solar panel or a coal factory or any of the other energy, natural gas, to pull that out from the earth or the earth's resources, generate power from it, transmit that power from one place to another that could be hundreds of miles away, and then transmit it down to your house and get it in a form where it is consumable to the point that your, 3-inch by 6-inch telephone with a little bitty jack in the bottom of it can be charged up, and you can use it for a day so that you can watch a television show on your phone while you drive down the highway. It's
It's
easy to take that for granted how it just happens.
It is. I spending as much time as I did. I was laughing with Patrick about 15 plus years, and I've traded oil and gas a lot. But the demand on the grid, that's one thing you worry about. And also, as other countries that have been, not using a lot of electricity, a continent of Africa, as it becomes more online and develops, much harder drain on the energy supply as well. So, you look at those things and you hope you're staying ahead of that.
It's not that they don't want to use energy.
They exactly
haven't had access.
Just hadn't had access. So as those things change, you hope that we here in this country continue to stay ahead of the curve a bit, because as he clearly states, nothing happens overnight, especially big projects. Even the small nuclears are going to take a while. So, you don't want to run into, the point where you have blackouts and things you're seeing in Europe because you don't have the ability to generate the power. You may have supply, but you can't generate enough power because you have not created those facilities. So staying in front of that is so important. And also having the workforce. We didn't really get into that with Patrick, but being in the workforce world, that you also have to have people that can work, and manage and create these facilities. So there's a huge demand coming. It really is.
And I really intended to get to that with Patrick as well. We just kind of ran out of time. And
but you have to be diversified. That's really where I was going. Coal is such a big piece of this. When you have a country like China that is coming online with hundreds of coal-fired plants, every month, using coal is important. Natural gas. I'd be riding through the lower part of the U.S. in the southern part, Louisiana, Mississippi, and just seeing all the natural gas burned off of the oil refineries, and you're going, man, I know it's
isn't that usable?
Yeah, can't we use that? I mean, Europe's fighting over it over there with Russia, and so I think that's such a big piece of where we have to go from here is continuing to build for the future, and as well creating opportunities where we can use the things that we haven't been. You can liquefy natural gas, put it on a boat, and send it on out, and people buy it. So, that's where we need to, again, getting back to building and doing things that the world wants. We got a lot of energy, and we can surely sell it.
Yeah.
Especially the stuff that we haven't had the greatest need for. But it is informative to learn, hey, so much of Mississippi is fueled off of natural gas, and up to almost 20% by Grand Gulf. I mean, that's huge. Great information, though. I was really appreciated that.
Can't help but wonder if I'm fortunate enough to live to the ripe age of 94, 50 years from now. What's it going to look like? Will we have small nuclear reactors on site that are powering factories? Can I have a micro reactor in my backyard that's powering my home?
Even better question. Think if we would have gone, as the two competing interests were really developing in energy and electricity generation between Edison and Tesla. What if we would have gone the Tesla route? If you wouldn't have had wires and you wouldn't have had all these things that would have that seemingly have restricted our ability to grow at a pace that would maybe have been faster, but yet it was more. You could have monetized the Edison system better. So, are we going to develop new technology? I think that's the thing that gets me really is where we go from here. Do we stay grounded? Do we stay line driven, or do we maybe find other alternatives that are?
So you're saying, is it possible that there is a source out there that is abundant, naturally occurring, and has the ability to generate power, and we just haven't discovered it yet?
Lightning is a good one. Waves. There's all kinds of stuff that Tesla proved that was there. We just got to find a way to grab it.
That's a good one, right? I mean, if you could harness the power of energy and lightning without using a kite and a key.
Do the math on the amount of energy in one bolt of lightning.
Oh, now you're talking. We might welcome those thunderstorms. 8 o'clock hour coming up. News is next.
Pour yourself a cup of coffee and get the Magnolia State's most important news of the day. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Thanks for being with us on this Monday morning. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi. Glad to have you along for the ride. Just finished up the 7 o'clock hour, which was brought to you by MWG Employer Services. Running a business is tough, and if you're struggling with HR, benefits, and payroll, you're not alone. That's where MWG Employer Services comes in. They can provide a full range of employer services plus a custom plan that fits you. Give them a call today, 601-206-7966. Or go to MWGEmployerServices.com.
I wanted to finish one thought. Geothermal was mentioned here on the text line by one of our genius listeners, as we have plenty of them. But geothermal is also a great piece of the equation. As Patrick was saying, you got to have a diversified energy plan. And dependency on any one thing is going to be a problem, whether it's your portfolio, as we all know, you get too overloaded in one thing. But geothermal is one of those hidden ones you don't hear a lot about, but yet on a site-by-site basis, it has an awful lot of staying power. And it generates a lot of energy that can be transitioned into something usable for your home. So, there's so many different things that we haven't really explored on a mass scale, but they're there. And the opportunities to move forward with those things, hopefully with a forward-thinking president like we have as well, that maybe we start breaking some of those traditional habits that are very hard to break, like addiction to certain types of energy. Nothing wrong with being overly reliant on something until it goes wrong, like in Spain in the blackouts. When you said, hey, let's do all this green stuff, then all of a sudden you don't have the power that you think you have. So I think that's where I wanted to finish that. It's just being diversified. Mississippi needs to lead in that and continue using its natural resources. You have the lignite mine and coal and all these things, geothermal. And the one I don't like much is wind, because I think there's a lot of hidden cost in that, other environmental issues. And, that's, if you've ever seen one of those turbines in the Midwest, I mean, it's not like it's this little windmill sitting over here. I mean, these things are huge. How much money do you have to spend to actually just plan the site for one of those things? And so it's again, it's part of the plan, though, and I don't have a problem with that. But relying on the green stuff, it sounds good. It's just not in practice, though.
Yeah, not in its entirety.
Yeah, no, it's great as an augmentation. Yeah, it's a good piece of the equation.
The best teams know how to get even better. That's why C Spire constantly enhances their wireless, fiber, internet, and business solutions for you. Visit them online at cspire.com today. C Spire, inspired by you. Dateline, Omaha, Nebraska. May 3rd, late afternoon. It was time. During the question and answer portion of the annual shareholders meeting of Berkshire Hathaway in Omaha, Warren Buffett said the time has arrived where Greg should become the chief executive officer of the company at year end. Stunned silence in the arena. Nobody, including Greg Abel, despite the fact that previously back in 2021, Warren Buffett had said at some point Greg Abel was going to be his successor. Nobody, with the exception of Warren Buffett's son and daughter, knew that he was stepping down from the CEO role at the end of this year. The tributes started pouring in almost immediately. Jamie Dimon from J.P. Morgan said Warren Buffett represents everything that is good about American capitalism and America itself, investing in the growth of our nation and its businesses with integrity, optimism, and common sense. Will there be a shareholders meeting in Omaha next year? Probably so. But in the most Warren Buffett fashion possible. He said that he was going to recommend to the board of directors that they confirm Greg Abel as the CEO at year's end. He did that on Saturday, and before the market bell opens this morning, the board of Berkshire Hathaway is expected to approve Greg Abel as the next CEO of the company while Warren Buffett stays on as chairman of the board. You know how we talk about the market doesn't like uncertainty? Zero uncertainty from Warren Buffett and the board at Berkshire Hathaway. Here's the plan. We've been getting ready for this. This is the guy that's going to be in charge. I'll still be around to help if needed. There was a great quote from Buffett, by the way. Let's see, I've got it right here. Buffett said, I would still hang around and could conceivably be useful in a few cases. Understated. But the final word would be what Greg said, in operations and capital deployment in whatever it might be. I was kind of reading about the introduction of Greg Abel to the Warren Buffett orbit. And he ran a company, Mid-American Energy, in Des Moines that Berkshire Hathaway bought. And so he kind of got into the Berkshire Hathaway system as a result of that and has grown into this role where Warren Buffett chose him to succeed him as CEO. Heard a really, really interesting Warren Buffett story recently. It was at an event where Tommy and Jim Duff were speaking, or the Duff brothers as they seem to be known collectively. They are the co-owners, co-CEOs, co-chairman of Duff Capital Investors. It's the most successful business in Mississippi that very few people know about, the two wealthiest Mississippians. And they own Southern Tire Mart and KLLM and a bunch of other companies. But they wholly own almost every company that they have. Southern Tire Mart, in the last 5 years, has diversified into a partnership with Southern Tire Mart at Pilot. So you've seen the travel centers, right? I mean, you've got the Pilot Flying J's that you see up and down the interstate, and those are rest stops for truckers. Not rest stops, but, places where they can stop and they can rest and they can fuel up and grab something to eat and get a shower. But the one thing that was missing was a place where they could get their truck repaired. And so Southern Tire Mart, in partnership with Pilot, has, they're growing like at a ridiculous pace. I think they've got 300 of those across the country. So the point in all of this is Berkshire Hathaway bought Pilot Flying J, from the Haslam family a few years ago. And so Berkshire Hathaway owns Pilot. Well, in this new partnership, Southern Tire Mart owns 55%, or the Duff Capital Investors owns 55% of Pilot at Flying J, and Berkshire Hathaway owns 45%. And Tommy Duff said not too terribly long ago he got a phone call from Warren Buffett. And, Tommy, this is Warren Buffett. Hello, Mr. Buffett. We really like your company. We like what you've done. We'd like to buy it. Quiet. And the response was something along the lines of, I can assure you we are flattered, but we really aren't for sale right now. We think we've got more work to do. Well, if you change your mind, know that we're here. Berkshire Hathaway is not a minority partner in any investments. Yes, sir, but it appears you are in this one. What a cool story. And so, big Mississippi company, wildly successful to the point that Berkshire Hathaway, under the leadership of Warren Buffett, wanted to buy the whole thing.
He didn't play around.
And all of their 25 companies, right. And it's like, hey, he's not calling the bank to see if he can get a loan to buy your multi-billion-dollar company.
No.
Just write a check.
He's one of the great ones, too. And there's a great video from 1962 out on YouTube. You ought to go look at it. And it's just Warren Buffett talking stocks and, how you value things. He's always been a value investor, somebody I studied, immensely. The thing about him, though, is that he's a fundamental guy, meaning he digs in on stuff that most people really find boring. He doesn't, just look at stock charts and basic numbers. I mean, he gets into the lifeblood of that company, and he has the staff that can provide him with the right information so he can make the right decisions. And when he wants to buy you, he knows you're good. There is no doubt about it. And so it's a great honor for the Duffs to have that kind of offer on the table because he does his homework. There's nobody like him. And I will say this, somebody that goes through as many financials as he does, he's looking at things that you and I have no idea. It's just a needle in a haystack. And that's the one thing he goes, yep, that's it. That's what I needed to see right there. And he makes a decision and writes checks.
In December of 2023, Buffett said, Greg will be more successful than I have been, and if I said otherwise, my nose would grow. 60th annual meeting for Warren Buffett. Of course, his relationship with Charlie Munger is one of legend as well. We got more coming up with you. Mornings with Richard Cross, Super Talk, Mississippi.
From the Venable Glass.
Shaping Mississippi politics each morning. Mornings with Richard Cross. Super Talk, Mississippi.
Couple of headlines that we don't have time to dive deep on this morning. JT Mitchell, news director at the Super Talk Mississippi News Team, will join us last couple of segments of the show. Post that Charlie Kirk made on X over the weekend, and this is a little concerning because we know that some of the confirmations in Congress are taking a while. This says if Ed Martin acting U.S. attorney of the District of Columbia is not confirmed by Senate Republicans before May 20th, then Judge Boasberg, who you've heard about, gets to choose his own replacement. If the Senate GOP doesn't confirm Ed in the next 2 weeks, Boasberg will appoint his replacement. And there is a likelihood that if you lean more to the right, you're not going to be fired up about the guy that he appoints to replace himself. Stuff got to get done. There's a lot of focus in a lot of different places, right? Legislation that's going on, trying to get the budget done. I will say, though, that when social media gets in an uproar about something, this administration seems to react to it. I'm not saying that that's necessarily a good thing. I'm sure that this is on the radar of Stephen Miller and Susie Wiles and probably even Donald Trump himself. But Senate Republicans going to have to get going on that in the next 2 weeks. Donald Trump was at it with some big posts yesterday, including this one: rebuild and open Alcatraz.
Yeah, I love that one. I was like, are you kidding me?
For too long, America has been plagued by vicious, violent, and repeat criminal offenders, the dregs of society who will never contribute anything other than misery and suffering. When we were a more serious nation in times past, we did not hesitate to lock up the most dangerous criminals and keep them far away from anyone they could harm. That's the way it's supposed to be. No longer will we tolerate these serial offenders who spread filth, bloodshed, and mayhem on our streets. That is why today I am directing the Bureau of Prisons, together the DOJ, FBI, and Homeland Security, to reopen a substantially enlarged and rebuilt Alcatraz to house America's most ruthless and violent offenders. We will no longer be held hostage to criminals, thugs, and judges that are afraid to do their job and allow us to remove criminals who came into our country illegally. The reopening of Alcatraz will serve as a symbol of law, order, and justice. We will make America great again, writes Donald Trump. So, got to look into the history books just for a second. Why was Alcatraz closed in the first place? After about 30 years of operation. Well, the story is that Alcatraz was closed because it was too expensive to operate. Now, Nancy Pelosi weighed in. She responded to a post by Caitlin Collins. Pelosi says Alcatraz closed as a federal penitentiary more than 60 years ago. It is now a very popular national park and major tourist attraction. The president's proposal is not a serious one. Well, Nancy, maybe it is and maybe it isn't. The Bureau of Prisons notes on its website, this was in the post from Caitlin Collins at CNN, on March 21st, 1963, U.S. prison Alcatraz closed after 29 years of operation. It did not close because of the disappearance of Morris and the Anglins. The decision to close the prison was made long before the three disappeared, but because the institution was too expensive to continue operating, saying that it cost about 3 times more than other prisons. So, what is Donald Trump doing here? Is he serious about enlarging and renovating and reopening Alcatraz that you can see from the coastline in San Francisco that many of you listening right now probably have toured? I hear the night tour is the best. Been to San Francisco a couple of times, have not done the boat ride out and tour of Alcatraz. Just hadn't made it happen. Hopefully one day. Unless it turns into an actual prison, in which case I have no real interest in visiting it. I mean, I guess as a visitor it might be okay, but not anything more than that. So what's he doing? Is he serious about retrofitting Alcatraz and sticking the most dangerous prisoners that we have a couple of miles offshore out in the San Francisco Bay, where the water is frigid and choppy and any attempt to escape requires a multi-mile swim in freezing waters, and there are only a few people that have ever accomplished that swim? Or is this statement about Alcatraz designed to do something else? Like divert your attention from the fact that criminals in the United States are being sent to other countries in their prisons, like the one in El Salvador, CENTCO. Could it be that he's saying, fine, you don't want us to take prisoners or deportees that are criminals and send them to another country? We'll just reopen Alcatraz. Oh, hold on a second, Mr. President. Hold on a second. We don't want to reopen Alcatraz. We're okay with El Salvador. Is this Trump playing chess while others are playing checkers, or is it just as simple as, you know what, throw a few $1 billion at it and reopen Alcatraz?
Well, it'd help Hollywood out. They may get a new movie script eventually. Somebody trying to escape, some kind of new prison movie.
It better be a movie filmed in the United States, because if it's filmed outside the United States, it's now going to be subject to 100% tariffs.
Film it in Mississippi. We'd love to have you.
Yeah. Marshall and Terry says floating prison on renovated super tankers like in Escape.
Not a bad idea.
If he got advice from the president of El Salvador about how they build and maintain their prisons, might not be a bad idea. Will Clint Eastwood star in that movie? Maybe Nicolas Cage. Or wait, did he get canceled?
Yeah, it'd be an interesting going back to The Rock.
Wait, did Nicolas Cage get canceled, or is he still good?
No, he's in
Kevin Spacey got canceled.
Yeah. Nicolas Cage is in every other movie still.
Okay, so he's still good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it'd be bad if American Treasure guy got canceled.
Yeah, well, and he did The Rock too. Remember?
Yeah, absolutely.
Alcatraz, so.
And Leaving Las Vegas and
every other thing.
Yeah. Seems like reactivating Alcatraz would be prohibitively expensive, so yeah, he's playing chess here. Well, it might be. And isn't it beautifully rich to watch the Democrats screaming about, oh, it's too expensive? Well, it's actually not a big deal. We're just going to take some of the money that you were allocating to USAID for nefarious purposes and reallocate that money to the prison. So it's like we're spending money that we were already spending. It's not like I mean, how do you jump up and down and scream about DOJ and the job that they've been doing all this time, and then when it is politically expedient for you, be like, we can't spend that money, it's wasteful?
And it's a bizarro world, that's for sure. We're living in the middle of it.
We're not going to get to it today. I'm going to save this for tomorrow. I don't love playing a 3-minute video or clip for you, but I really think you need to, and it's almost 4 minutes. I really want you to hear, in case you didn't over the weekend, a segment of the interview that Donald Trump did with Kristen Welker on Meet the Press. And I actually give Kristen Welker pretty high marks. She let the president talk. Now, not for the entire... An over 90-minute interview that included over 100 questions. Unscripted, unplanned. Can you imagine? On two fronts. On two fronts, can you imagine? One, can you imagine Joe Biden doing that? Of course not. I mean, it's just not possible. Two, can you imagine Kamala Harris doing that? So whether or not you like Donald Trump, or whether you like Donald Trump or not, the fact that the President of the United States of America, and by the way, it feels like this should be a prerequisite, but it's not, has the ability and the willingness to sit down in a sometimes combative interview setting and answer questions unscripted for an hour and a half. Isn't that a nice change, whether you like the guy or not? JT joins us next.
From with Richard Cross, here on Super Talk, Mississippi.
What else?
And always on the Super Talk app.
What's up? Good morning one more time. Thanks for being us, well, two more times on this Monday. This is Mornings with Richard Cross, Super Talk, Mississippi. Richard Lance and now JT Mitchell stops by as he does every single Monday morning. He is the news director for the Super Talk Mississippi news team. You're never allowed to vacation on a Monday. We will see you every Monday morning from now until forever. Good morning, JT.
That's a long commitment, Richard.
Yeah, I know. I'm disappointed in you.
Why?
You sent me your news updates earlier this morning, some ideas for things that we could talk about, and you did not include the man who you've hooked me on. You have driven this story home to the point that I was looking forward to the Jamal Roberts update because more happened yesterday, and there was nothing from you this morning. Or, are you a Fairweather fan? Have you lost your gusto for this story?
Do you want to tell the listeners what I always put in the email? Anything else you want to talk about, Richard? I got the info, man. I got it.
We've reached the point where JT knows that I'm going to bring it up. He doesn't even have to. Jamal Roberts moves into the top 8, and he did so on Ladies' Night.
Ladies' Night. Hey, I got you hooked, Richard. That's what it's all about. I wanted you to bring up American Idol first. And here we are. Jamal Roberts, he knocked it out of the park last night. Mm-hmm. He sang a Carrie Underwood song, which is a good move considering she is a judge.
Yep.
She loved it. It's one of those sassy songs that she has. It's Undo It. And he put his runs on it. He put a little of his own sass on it, some soulful bliss. And the fans loved it. 21 million votes came in between 7 p.m. and the final commercial break, and each contestant got over 1 million, but if my math is correct, the top 8 out of those 10 would have each gotten at least 2.5 million, and so people are loving Jamal Roberts, and he's moving to the top 8. He might just mess around and win it all, Richard.
He might.
And his story, we talk about it all the time, but, you may have a new listener right now. And this guy is a PE teacher. He's 27 years old. He's a father of 2. He's trying to be a star. And personally, I think he's on his way to being a star. If I had to guess, unless he chooses to do so, he will not have to be a PE teacher after this season of American Idol.
Yeah. There were some people who were surprised by a couple of the eliminations. Carrie Underwood, Luke Bryan, Lionel Richie are the judges. Miranda Lambert was the celebrity guest in last night's game. Kanan Jones and Colby Jordan were both eliminated.
And both of those people were platinum ticket winners. So if you don't know what that is, that's kind of a new deal on American Idol, just the past few seasons, where if you get a platinum ticket instead of a gold ticket, you automatically skip past the Hollywood round. And so you're deemed to be the best of the best based on your audition, but those two people who you just mentioned were the only platinums remaining, and they're now out.
Mm. Some say that it's song choice that caused them to miss out. Well, you mentioned Carrie Underwood a second ago. Jane and I were talking yesterday. We were driving back from Nashville. Had gone with our daughter this weekend to celebrate her birthday, and there's some diversity in Carrie Underwood's repertoire. From singing "How Great Thou Art" to "I Dug My Keys into the Side of His Pretty Little Souped-Up Four-Wheel Drive." She covers the gambit.
That makes a good artist, right?
She's got it all.
Makes a good artist. But no, really, American Idol is every Sunday and Monday nights at 7 o'clock Central. And even if you don't watch, still vote. I mean, we'll vote for Jamal Roberts at least, because we've told you all about him. Let's make Jamal Roberts the next American Idol. You can vote up to 30 times, the app, the website, and then via text message. They'll be back on tonight, and it'll be the Judges Song Competition.
Yep.
And so just tune in and vote for Jamal Roberts.
The 8 remaining contestants, Brianna Nix, Maddie Pruitt, Jamal Roberts, John Foster, who I like a lot. He's got like a real country sound to him. Not like new country, like old school country. There is very much a George Strait sound there. Josh King, Gabby Simone, Slater Nally, and Thunderstorm Artists.
He's good. Maddie Pruitt is really good. I think she's 16 years old, and she sang a Janis Joplin song a couple of episodes ago. And I think Janis would have been proud. I mean, she crushed it. The talent is unreal, but not to take away from Jamal. Hopefully he'll just keep moving along. Every episode, every Monday, we come back on and we talk about how he's still in it. And
what's the voting schedule going forward? Like, how many will they cut each week between now and the end?
Typically, it's 2.
Okay.
But sometimes American Idol, ABC and Disney have really gotten the modern age of Idol down, because Idol went away for a while because people got tired of it. They brought it back with a coaching format with some different twist here and there, and so they may change it. Sometimes the judges, if they decide to, they could change the rules and say, hey, 7 are going to be saved, and I'm using this as an example. 7 are going to be saved, but we're going to pick 1. So we'll see. But season 23 is set to end this month.
All right. So end of the month, we will know a winner. Registration to vote. There's a deadline today.
There is. I don't know if I can push this any harder. I brought the form. If you're watching on SuperTalk TV, it is so easy to register to vote. All you have to do is go to your clerk's office. They'll give you a form, fill it out, sign it, boom, you're registered. Or you can print it out on the Secretary of State's website. It's 7 short sections, 1 page, and then a signature. And you put the address, you mail it in. If you mail it in, it has to be postmarked today. If you go to the clerk's office, you have to do it by 5 p.m., and this is for the June 3rd general election for all of our cities and towns across the state. Just get it done. I mean, I can't say it any clearer. I got an email this morning from Michael Watson's office that said, we're pushing it. We really are, but turnout is still bad.
Okay.
And I don't know what else we can do to fix that. I mean, if you want to email me, I'll send you the form. I mean, it's not very difficult.
JT is doing the yeoman's work here. He wants you to exercise your constitutional right to go to the polls.
Well, like good leaders, especially in my community, and I think if you have most of your community voting, you'll probably get a good leader, right?
I know you have to have your news hat on. You're not supposed to have opinions. Is there any drama whatsoever between now and the June mayoral election with regard to John Horn becoming the next mayor?
No. I think that... But you're right. The deadly conjunction. I think that there are some independents who have a case. Rodney DePriest, I've seen him out on the campaign trail a lot. Zach Service is loud. Kim Wade may be louder. There are some independents that will get some votes, but you got to remember that I live in a city that has been under Democratic control for the entire 21st century. And, you know, if I were to bet, I would put all of my money on John Horn winning. But we'll see. You know, more so you talk about the down ballot races. If you have lower turnout, because a lot of people, they might say John Horn won the Democratic nomination. He's got it. I don't have to go back to the polls on June 3rd. If a lot of people think like that, independents have a better chance of getting more votes. But if the Democratic population or the people that want Horn to be mayor, because there was a lot of crossover vote, turns back out, he'll be in City Hall with ease.
Yeah. Paul Hernando on the C Spire text line says, will you just fill that form out for me?
Do I have to? I mean, do you want me to forge your signature too?
I don't think that's the best plan for our news director, JT Mitchell. Seems like a bad idea.
But you talk about these, it does, but you talk about these municipal elections, it's not just Jackson. I mean, Gulfport, that mayor's election is going to be worth watching. I'm hearing that Sonia Williams-Barnes is on the ground. She's campaigning hard. Gulfport, it went blue during the most recent governor's race, yet it's had a red mayor for however so long. Mm-hmm. Hugh Keating is on the Republican side. That one is worth watching.
We have gotten some word that there is a lot of outside national money from blue organizations that is coming into the Gulfport mayor's race.
And they wouldn't do that if this seat wasn't able to flip, right? Yeah. It is in play because Gulfport, you have to remember, that is the second largest city in the state, the biggest city on the coast, and the coast is tremendously important to not only the region, but the entire state.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can address this on the other side. Somebody said, when are y'all going to talk about the big issue about what was voted on in Rankin County regarding mobile homes? I'm going to have to
meeting this morning at 9 also.
Say again?
They're having a meeting this morning at 9, potentially to rescind.
Okay. We'll try to get up to date on that on the other side of this timeout. It's Mornings with Richard Cross, JT Mitchell, news director at the SuperTalk, with the SuperTalk Mississippi news team, is my guest. Although he's not really a guest, he's kind of like a live-in guest. He's got his own guest bedroom just for him, or something like that. We're back with you right after this. It's Mornings with Richard Cross.
From the better.
Start your day right. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
When they play their music, that hard rock music, they back it with a lot of flash, but it's still that same old backbeat rhythm that really, really kicks them in the. They say the hard rock and roll is the beat, and from what I see.
A lot of focus on mobile homes in Rankin County. There is a new zoning ordinance that has been appealed by the Mississippi Manufactured Housing Association and has, as it has become more known about, has generated a lot of feedback from the community. It's a zoning ordinance that deals with agricultural areas and residential estate areas where the placement of a mobile home would require it to be 7 years old or less, and any modifications to an existing mobile home would have to be approved by a planning commission. And there are a lot of people that are concerned about what this would do to the value of their current mobile home and also the potential changes that are going into effect. In the past, areas that were zoned agricultural have they've had an exception, right? So if you had a mobile home in an agricultural zoning area and you wanted to add a porch or a carport or whatever, you could do that on your own or without permission, and that part of it is changing. And this has created, JT, quite the brouhaha.
It has, and you kind of hit it on the head. I mean, the big part of it that people are up in arms about is this change from permitted to conditional use, where if you want to put down a new mobile home or make a modification, you have to go to a planning commission. People don't like that. They believe that they ought to be able to do what they want with their own home. And they also are mad about a lack of public notification. At least that's what they're calling it. There was a newspaper ad, and it talked about a hearing being held. I believe it was maybe a few months ago, a hearing being held on the matter, and nobody saw it. And that's where these people are really upset about it. And so the Mississippi Manufactured Homes Association has gotten about 133 signatures. They're holding meetings to further explain what's going on, and they're also appealing it. It does have people up in arms.
wonder where this goes. I mean, Lance, you were saying there's another hearing that's scheduled for today. Is that right?
Miss Rebecca Hall has shared that with me. The power of the people does work. We're here for them, and that message was able to get out. And so there will be a 9 o'clock meeting in 4 minutes, and there will be a number of people there, I think, this morning. So to be heard and to express their concerns.
I think the last meeting they had on Thursday had about 300 people in attendance.
That's a lot more than the first meeting. Yeah. I can assure you that. Yeah. But the newspaper deal, that's something this state has been battling in a lot of sectors where, you can talk about an inmate being granted parole. They put in a newspaper, nobody sees it,
that's
boom,
right.
They did it. I mean, it's just this law surrounding public notification. But the issue is that newspapers aren't necessarily getting read as much as they used to. And nobody really looks through the public notices as is.
Well, and there was also conditions on there in which, like a pole barn or those types of things, as Ms. Hall explained, it wasn't just mobile homes. It was also this overlay of a planning commission if you wanted to really do anything to your property. And a lot of folks felt that was a little overreach given that they didn't really know that this meeting was even going on. And as JT said, the newspaper, that's been one of the sticking points because who reads a newspaper much anymore?
It's one of those deals where I'm a big property rights guy. Like you own the dirt and you're paying taxes on the dirt and it feels like you ought to be able to do it. But at the same time, I understand a planning commission being involved to try to help a municipality or even a county in this case maintain some sort of aesthetic decorum. And that's now you have to realize that's from a guy coming from a city and a county where, you have to go before a commission before breaking wind. So, I mean, maybe we're just conditioned to be aware of it.
I get it.
Where I live, I mean, just a few years ago, you could do pretty much whatever you wanted to do in the county. But now their building permit process for the county is just like there is for the city and all the layers that go with it.
So we'll be keeping up with that story through our newscast and at supertalk.fm. We'll see where it goes from here, if it's appealed or not.
Very good. Well, yeah, and if ultimately it's overturned, I think the appeal has happened.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll see if ultimately
I think the meeting is to rescind
today. Yeah. JT, thanks for stopping by. Always good to visit with you. Festival season, got lots of those happening all over the state, and supertalk.fm is your place to keep up with everything that is happening in your community in all 82 counties here in the Magnolia State. JT, I hope you have a great week, buddy.
Likewise. Happy Cinco de Mayo, guys. See you next week.
To you as well. Lance, thank you, my friend.
Had a blast, bro. See you tomorrow.
We'll talk to you soon. We'll do this again in about 21 hours. Thanks for spending your Monday morning with us. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi.
It's all right. If you got someone to love, well, it's all right. Everything will work out fine. Well, it's all right. We're going to the end of the line.
Are you ready? Mid-Delta Auction Company will be bringing you a massive 3-day absolute public auction. May 29th, 30th, and 31st. It all kicks off Thursday at Maloof Furniture. Then Friday and Saturday at the Old Baldwin Warehouse in Greenwoods Industrial Park.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.